I'll try and bring my presentation down a bit because I'm aware time is slipping by. Now what we've just seen there from Martin is how the service can be configured and create data and hold data on itself. And what I'd like to look at today really is how you can actually get that information back in a format that you can use usefully on your desktop and what it is you might do with it once you get there. I've got a couple of small introductory slides that talk about aspects of what we are offering that makes this possible. And the key is the Web Service and Mobility Pack, which is going to provide you with web service data feed that you can access from third-party products, one of which is Excel. The actual service itself is based on a protocol titled NoData. Originally came out of Microsoft, it's now an open standard. Really, it's the way in which the communication between a client and a server works in a way which is nice because it doesn't bind to known objects. You can't create a service that knows anything about what it's going to consume. Now, in the case of EnergySys, obviously that's really advantageous because we create objects all the time. Martin has created loads of objects. I don't know what objects Martin might have in his system, and I want to provide them via a web service. And NoData really facilitates that. There's quite a lot of technical stuff on that, but I think we'll probably move straight into actual demonstration of what you can do with it. So first things first, I'm here now. I'm going to show you today using Excel 2013, where the OData feed is built in to the product. If you're using 2010, you can use it, but you need a Microsoft plugin. 2013 is quite nice because it's all built in. It's integrated much more smoothly. Now we are obviously exposing this web service. So we have a URL for the service here, and then you have your usernames and username and credentials. And the same ones you use for the real service, and you get all of the same kind of permissions and control and access rules that Peter was just discussing. So let's go ahead now, and I'll ask Excel to connect to the server. So what's happened now is Excel has asked the server for a list of the data that's available that you can pick from. So here we can see a whole load of objects that exist in EnergySys. They could be table data that contains tens, thousands, millions of rows. And what's happened is the server has generated a description of all of those data objects to consume in Excel. If I pick a couple of these off, say I was interested in having a look at my wells and my well tests, and then I finish, I say where I want to put it. In this case, I'm just going to create a simple table. Off we go. Now the server is now asking for all of the data from the service that are of those object types and loading it into Excel. So here we can see I've got a sheet containing my wells. So there's 50 or so wells that just got from the service. And then the other data I asked for was the well tests. So you have your table data full of well tests. Now obviously once it's in Excel, you can manipulate it just like any other functionality in Excel. So you can start then to do simple things like maybe you want to know what your maximum oil rate was. Oops, I could probably do that higher up, but never mind. Well, in this case, I'll take my highest GOR, and it's just taking the data. The thing to remember is all of this is still coupled to the service. So if I run in some new well tests or run an allocation or something like that, I refresh this data, then it gets the data back again from the server. There's also quite an interesting new expression language that lets you interrogate tables without actually knowing how big they are, which is quite nice. So again, supposing I'm interested in the gas oil ratio, you can see that I have this new kind of reference here. If I take away the header, because I really want the actual name of the column, then again you get the same result. But in this case, it knows that it's processing that table. So whatever data comes back from the server, no matter how big it is, you don't have that whole irritation of not knowing what size, a dynamic range, or any of those things. It just knows how to do it. Okay, so that's just to give you a little bit of a feel for what it's like to create these kind of tables. All the data is coming from the service and being loaded into Excel. You can do lots of other interesting things. You can create a new column, and then I can say, I don't know, I could say something crazy, and I'll take the oil segmentation, divide by 10. And it will fill that in no matter how much data comes in. So I can build quite interesting new functionality in here just using standard Excel. Obviously I could equally delete a column. I don't want to see that, so I just delete it, and it's gone. So it works very much as any other table object would in Excel. Being a table is quite cool because you can use the wizards to create interesting views of the data. So I might want to see color scales or all kinds of different things, or I might look at charts. So okay, I'll whack up a chart for that. I choose my chart and so on. So all of the standard wizards are then available to you in Excel. It's really, really easy to produce something really surprisingly rich and very powerful. So what I think would be good would be to take a look at some I prepared earlier and see what sort of things you can get from the system. Okay, so this is an example where I've pulled down some data from the service just as I showed you just now. Here I've got my field data, so this is all straight off the production machine, and I've got my daily field allocations. So here I've got about 3 years worth of data that's been loaded from the server straight into Excel. And then we can start to manipulate it. Now everyone's familiar with Excel, so it's really nice, it's a great thing to work with. So we've got all that data piling in from the service, and that's happening by magic, and it's all kept in line. No matter what happens, you hit refresh, it goes to the server, it gets the data, and your table updates. So you can start to do simple stuff you've done, in Excel for years. So here we've got a simple thing that says, okay, if the field name is there, then do a sum if, work out all my totals. So I can do ordinary things. So here I've got a nice simple summary report that gets for each of the sample, each of the fields, the oil, gas and water, how long it's run for, what the total BOE equivalent is of that over the years, and then finally what its contribution has been to the total for the field. And it's all standard Excel. If I'm feeling perhaps slightly more creative, I can start to use pivot tables. I don't know if people are familiar or happy with pivot tables generally. People use pivot tables much? A few people? It's a really powerful and much underused. I underused it for years. I didn't realise how good it really is. But again, here what we've got now is a table where I've got my list of attributes that have come from the service, and I can just switch them on and say, okay, I want to see what the oil value is. And the resolution's slightly challenged here, but what you can see is I get a table and a chart. I can change what kind of chart I've got. So I might choose to have a line chart instead. And again, if I do the refresh, all the chart data and everything else will get updated. So you could build quite sophisticated standard reports that you might want to even distribute. If you send this to somebody who doesn't have access to the service, it will simply tell them that the data can't be updated, but they'll still be able to view it. If they do have access to the service, they can put in their credentials and they can do a refresh at their end. So you could distribute it, monthly, or you could distribute one as a template. People could update it for themselves. Or finally, you as the person who's putting the spreadsheet together could decide to disconnect the service entirely. So when it just turns up as flat data. To give you an idea of how you might use this data, I thought it would be interesting to look at some history here. So here I've got a pivot table that is calculating my totals by field. So we can see for each field what the sum of the oil value is. And then I use the obviously not entirely robust forecast function in Excel to look at that data and predict what my field production might be on a given date in the future. Now obviously you could put in any functionality you want. You've got the data, you can process it anyhow you like, but I just thought it would be interesting to see what my decline chart might look like if I use the standard Excel formulas just to work it out. As you can see, it's again really very, very simple all type out to the service, just automatically updates. Now, being Excel obviously has other advantages. It all links with anything else that Excel happens to support. So you can imagine our data is coming in on one side. You can do any calculations or maths that you would normally do in Excel. You can use any of the add-ins you might favour or like. One of the ones that I just put in here to demonstrate a little bit is an add-in for Bing. So here now we've got our fields and a location, and then we have the Bing map here, which is usefully laid out, that places those on the location, and you can see what the production is. And it doesn't matter what add-in you use, it's standard Excel. So you've got all of your raw data coming in those tables, and then you can use Excel to do whatever you normally do in Excel on your desktop. And you get all of the same functionality you would get, so if you were using Pi Process Workbook, you could combine data from that with data from our service, or if you wanted to, you could get data from third party. Maybe you would get pricing data from Platts, combine that with the field production data or the well production data from the service, multiply it through and get actual values. You can really, whatever you do in Excel now, you could do with this service, but the advantage is obviously you've still got the security, the management, the calculations taking place on the server. I think that's probably all I'm going to cover. It's quite a quick run through, but I want to make sure there's time for James. And I'll be more than happy to take any questions now or discuss any of the things afterwards. If you're interested in particular functionality, we can take a look in the coffee break afterwards. Okay.